Well, hello, and welcome again to the 2012fad.com. I will be your host for this evening, and my name is Charlie Bluehawk. Last night, we talked about the forever asshole. Now, normally I don't like to swear, I don't like to use profanity. And it's not for any moral or religious or cultural reason. The true statement is that when we use profanity on a regular basis, when we swear, it degrades us personally. It doesn't do anything to you, but it degrades me when I swear. It actually lowers my IQ. And frankly, my IQ is so low, I honestly just can't afford to lose any more brain cells. So that's why I don't swear. But sometimes profanity, cursing, swearing, the words are very useful because some concepts can only be described swearing. And that, of course, is the forever asshole. So what is the forever asshole? Well, in the simplest possible terms, it's a used car salesman. It's a politician. It's the Mandarin class, the servants of our masters. We never see our masters, of course. We just see the Mandarin class. They're politicians. They're corporate stooges. They're all the same. They're used car salesmen. And of course, that gets us to the biggest con that we, the people of the United States, face today, the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, the Federal Reserve Bank sounds very governmental. It sounds very official. It sounds like we elect politicians to watch it for us. It sounds like there are experienced people with degrees and education and knowledge and experience to run the Federal Reserve Bank. No. The Federal Reserve Bank is not federal. It has nothing to do with the U.S. government at all. And it's not a bank. It's a printing press. That's it. And it's not even owned by the American people. It's owned by offshore investors. And its goal is to steal our money. Some time ago, our politicians, the forever assholes, sold the printing of our paper money of our nation to that group of offshore owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. More forever assholes. It's like living in a small town in the Midwest, Americana, Norman Rockwell, snow in the winter with Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny at, in April. And you're living in this idyllic paradise in the Midwest of America, and suddenly all the print shops in town close except for one. And the mayor of your little town has signed an executive order stating that you must do all your printing at this one print shop. If you go online for your printing, if you go out of town for doing your printing, you will go to prison. Okay. Doesn't make any sense to you, but you're a good, law-abiding American citizen. You're proud of your country. You know the laws are just and fair. So you said, okay, fine. So you need your resume printed out. You're looking for a new job. And under the law, you're forced to use this one print shop. And you go in, you get 10 resumes printed, and not only are you overcharged, not only do they do a really bad job, there's a little note on the bill that says that you owe this print shop 5% of all the money you will ever earn in your life. Well, you're an American citizen. That couldn't possibly happen here. It must be a misunderstanding. It's a joke. I won't say anything. I'll just ignore it because obviously it's silly. So you send out your 10 resumes. You get a new job. And then you get hit with a notice from your bank, from your first paycheck, that they've stolen 5% of your salary right out of your bank account without your consent, without your knowledge, and they've given it directly to the print shop. Off the top, before taxes, 5% gone. Next thing you know, the mayor of your little idyllic Midwestern town has signed even more executive orders. Turns out that he is not the honest fellow that you thought he was just because he dresses well and speaks well and combs his hair very nicely. Turns out he's a drunk, so he runs over people, and he needs alibis, so he doesn't go to prison. Turns out he's a gambler, He loses money all the time, so he needs someone to pay his debts. So where does he go? Well, the nice people who own the one print shop in town have stepped up and helped him out. The very nice, honest people who own the bank stepped up and loaned him money. So he's not going to prison, and all of his debts are paid. But now he owes them a favor. All of a sudden, the mayor of your idyllic little Midwestern town is signing more executive orders. Suddenly, where there used to be 5 or 6, now there's only one gas station in town. And you have to buy your gas from that one gas station in town. If you wait and go out of town to get your gas, you'll go to prison. You'll be arrested. Now there's only one grocery store, and the prices are astronomical, and the quality of the food is horrifying. It actually tastes like plastic. There's only one mechanic in town all of a sudden, and he does a rotten job, and he's nasty, and he's mean, and he overcharges, and it's a federal offense for you to go out of town and give your business to anyone else. You will go to prison. Suddenly there's no competition. And if, again, by law, you try to get a better price, better service, better quality, better treatment from another company, you go to jail. So now, that 5% that the bank is stealing from you off the top every 2 weeks and giving it directly to the print shop, now it's really hurting you. So you need a better job. You need a job that pays more money. So what do? Where do you go? You got no choice. You go back to that very same print shop, and you now owe them even more money. Then you lose your current job. The boss found out you were looking around, and now you have no income at all. But the bank is still taking 5% out of your bank account every 2 weeks as if you were still getting an income. And they give it to the print shop. You see, the print shop doesn't care if you're making money or not. You owe them 5%. That's it. And then you die. The stress and the local town doctor have killed you. You can't get good quality food because under the laws of the United States, according to the FDA, Americans are not entitled to healthy, nutritious, or clean food. And since there's only one grocery store in town that only sells plastic food, and they're so blatant about it, they don't even pretend that it's edible, but it's the only place you can go. You go to the town doctor, who's a quack, and he sells you a whole cocktail of drugs. Of course, they're all petroleum-based as well as the food you're eating, and now you're dead. They've killed you. So what happens now? Your children now inherit your debt. They have to sell the family home just to pay the print shop. And your children, well, they need jobs, but they don't have the experience that you did, but they still need jobs. So they have to get lower paying jobs than you could have gotten. But where do they go to get their resumes printed? The same print shop. 5% of their salaries are stolen. Plus they're still paying off your debt because you should have lived another 50 years. And so the print shop is now charging interest plus late fees on your debt, and you're dead. And your children have to pay it. And the cycle of debt just gets deeper and deeper, and there doesn't seem to be any way out. And that's where you and I are today. The Federal Reserve Bank, a privately owned offshore company, is nothing but a place, a warehouse, where they've got printing machines. And they print out the dollar bills for us to use. And for the privilege of printing our own money for us, this print shop, this Federal Reserve Bank, gets 5 cents up front for every dollar that they print out for us. You and I are broke before we even start. It's time to start arresting the forever assholes, putting them in prison, and simply taking our money back that they've stolen. And so tonight I thought we would chat about order in a jar. Now this, for the most part, is going to be a fairy tale. What we're going to talk about first is very real. We've chatted about it before. You can look it up yourself. It's real. But the end of the story, that's where the fairy tale part begins to kick in, because at that point I cannot point you in any particular direction, say, okay, you go there, you can put your hand on it, you can feel it, you can hold it, you can read it, you can verify it. I can't do it at that point. This is a collection of my own personal experiences, real or hopefully imagined. I honestly don't know. But there's a sad consistency to all of this, so I guess we'd best chat about it and see where it goes. So the non-fairy tale part of the story is where we'll begin. We'll start with what we know is real. Now we've chatted, you and I, about how the universe is electrical in nature. And in fact, the universe produces so much electrical energy, we don't know how it does this, and we don't know where it goes. Now, Western scientists, who I know quite well, many of them, at NASA for 5 years I was with Western scientists, and I had such sympathy, such pity for these people. Because Western scientists have to think inside of a very small, very dark, very dusty box, or they lose their paychecks. They have to do what their owners tell them to do, which is, of course, the government, which is, of course, our masters. So they can only talk about things that the government allows them to talk about. Anything else they have to ignore. A lot of drinking goes on at NASA. So Western scientists have decided that 97% of our universe is missing. It's gone. They can't find it. They call it dark matter. They call it dark matter since we can't see it, and since they use the most primitive of tools NASA does to study the universe, which is the spectrum of light, they can't see it. But if you and I live inside of a bubble, which is a proven fact, the entire universe where you and I live right now is inside of a bubble, a soap bubble, how can anything go missing? I mean, there's no place to go. But it is a fact that you and I do live in the middle, the bottom of a sea of electrical energy. It's all around us. It's inside of us. You and I are electrical. The cat is electrical. Your fish dinner is electrical. The floor you're walking on is electrical. And because the atoms in all of us and all of these things vibrate at the same speed, vibrate at the same frequency, we can touch each other, we can hold each other, we can talk to each other, and we cannot fall through that solid wood floor that we're walking on because we're all the same frequency. We're all in the same car, and the radio is tuned to the same frequency, 101.1 on your FM radio dial. We're all the same. But that gets us to what is electricity? Ask a scientist. Well, ask an honest scientist. And you'll discover that nobody knows what electricity is. No one knows. We can use some of it to turn on our lights or start the car. But that's it. We really don't know. We don't have a clue what electricity is. Now, Western scientists, and actually you and I already know this, we know that electricity has something to do with gravity. Because if you go online to the United States Patent and Trademark Office right now, you'll find hundreds of patents, at least 127, 147 that I can remember. There are patents approved by the U.S. government, patents on how to build a working flying saucer. Now, a flying saucer, one of ours, or God's forbid, one of theirs, a flying saucer is driven by gravity. Your car is driven by a mechanical force that turns the wheels, and it's the friction of your rubber tires against the asphalt that causes the car to move forward. Flying saucers are powered or driven by something called geogravitics. It's the control of gravity. Well, gravity, it turns out, if you read these patents at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, gravity for a flying saucer to fly comes from the flow of electrical current between the negative pole of an object, say the top of the flying saucer, and the positive poles of the flying saucer, say the rim of the flying saucer. Now you and I, we have the same effect on you and I. We chatted about this the other day, and it gets back to how the Earth is physically getting bigger. It's growing. And it can grow because it's converting the energy that it gets from the center of our galaxy, converting that electrical energy into matter. So the Earth is physically growing. Now, you and I talked about the fact that the center of our galaxy is broadcasting waves of information 1 trillion times a second to all of us in the form of electrical energy. And because the Earth lives a fairly long time, it can convert this electrical energy into matter. The Earth then grows. So the Earth started out as a solid ball with a molten core. But now that solid core has expanded. The continents have not drifted, they've expanded, just like the surface of a balloon. You blow up a child's balloon. If you draw continents on that little balloon, you'll see, well, make sure it's fairly accurate to what we recognize today. Then put more air into that balloon. The continents don't drift. They're riding on top of the surface of a hollow ball that's growing. Well, you and I talked about the hollow Earth the other day and how we now have a molten core, which is an internal sun. Now, how can that internal sun sit exactly in the center of a hollow ball? For the same reason that a flying saucer theoretically can fly. It's the flow of electrical energy from the negative to the positive poles. You and I, we now know, are held against the surface of the Earth because the center of gravity is not beneath our feet. It's above our heads. And the center of gravity of our world above our heads is pushing us down towards the surface of the Earth because of the flow of electrical energy. It's like if you ever been, if you ever been watching a movie and there's a scene where, the bad guys are trying to hide the evidence, so they have to put the car into a compactor, and the big metal arm swings over the car, and there's an electromagnet on it, and the electromagnet goes down, grabs the car, picks it up, swings it over, and drops it into the car crusher, and the car crusher crushes it, and then all the evidence is gone. Well, it's the same effect of the electromagnetic device that picked up the car and swung it over and dropped it into the compactor. Until you put electrical current through it, it's just a piece of metal. But then, with a little amount of electrical energy, there's enough force of energy so strong you can actually pick up the car with it. So that's why you and I are glued to the surface of the Earth, this hollow ball, because of the flow of the electrical current. Which gets us back to the original question, what is electricity? Nobody has a clue, but it's everywhere. So if electricity is everywhere, and the universe where you and I live is generating massive amounts of electrical energy, where is it all going? We know that we live, you and I, inside of a bubble, that our universe, our home, is inside of a soap bubble. And that outside of the soap bubble, outside of the universe, there's nothing, except maybe for more soap bubbles clinging to each other. And we also know, again, that from the center of our little galaxy, inside of this one of millions or trillions of galaxies inside of the universe, and our universe is inside of a soap bubble, we know that from the center of our particular galaxy, there are transmissions of information in the form of energy, electrical energy in the form of waves that hit us and everything else in our galaxy trillions of times a second. And you and I also know that we're part of a living machine right here on Earth. That you and I, each of us, have our own separate frequencies. Our bodies have our own frequencies, just like a radio station has its own frequency that's unique unto itself. You and I are broadcasting radio waves and receiving radio waves from each other all the time, constantly. You and I are constantly exchanging information with one another, and then we pass that information on to the people we meet next. Now, we do it through radio waves, we do it through the physical motion or movements of our body, by eye contact. We do it by speech. We talk to each other. You and I discussed the other day the fact that you and I are actually having two totally different conversations at exactly the same time. Right now, you and I are conscious that we're speaking in the forward direction. We're consciously aware of this. But at the exact same time, thanks to the work of a gentleman in Australia by the name of David John Oates, we now realize that we're also speaking in reverse speech at exactly the same time, and having what might be a completely different conversation with one another, but in reverse. It's the same effect I noticed when I heard reverse speech the first time. It made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was creepy, because I realized it was the same voice, the same sound that ghosts speak with. That's another story. It's also the same voice that in the episode My Mother the Reptile, where that woman was possessed theoretically by the spirit of her dead mother. Her mother, after dying, was this claim, the mother had, after dying, evolved into a higher form of life. She had evolved into a reptile and was now possessing the body of her daughter. Same effect when I listened to that thing talk. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. So all three types of communication had the same effect on me. Go to davidjohnoates.com. You can hear reverse speech. I think he also has a website, reversespeech.com. Listen to the examples he has. Now look up ghost voices on the internet. People go around to cemeteries and things and record the voices of ghosts. It'll have the same effect on you. Why? I have no idea. But getting back to something vaguely resembling reality, you and I live inside of an ocean of information, because there's energy around us, and that energy holds information. But it's not random. There is an order to our universe. It starts with the atoms in our body. And the design of the atoms in our body is duplicated in the design of the solar system where you and I live. If you look at the model of an atom and look at a model of the solar system, they're identical. God or the machine or the computer does not endlessly redesign the universe from very small to very big. It's the same design over and over and over again. So, from the atoms of our body, to the solar system we live in, to the galaxy where our solar system is, to the universe that our galaxy exists in. All of this lives inside of a soap bubble. Now, inside of this universe, inside of this soap bubble, there are at least 10 dimensions, other places and other people just like you and me, only different. We all live in the exact same space at exactly the same time. But because we are of different frequencies, because the atoms of our bodies vibrate differently than yours and mine do, an infinite number of you and me can be in the same space at the same time and never touch each other. There could be dozens, hundreds, thousands, millions of you and me in exactly the same space in exactly the same time, and we'll never know anything about one another. Up until this point in our conversation, all of this is fact. You can look it up. You don't need me for this. This is a part where the story has to be classified as fairy tale. Because I once went to a place that I cannot understand. But I stood there and I saw it with my own eyes. And I think what it was outside. It was outside of our world, outside of our galaxy, outside of our universe, outside of the soap bubble that our universe is in. I think it's actually outside of the soap bubbles as well. But I cannot tell you how I got there. But I think I know where it is. So this is the fairy tale part of the story. Now, I've had so many odd, bizarre, strange, and frankly mostly hateful things done to me that at this point in my existence here, and I don't say life because I haven't been alive yet, in my existence here, I just take this stuff in my stride. To me, it's just another day. Oh, look, a skyscraper appeared out of nowhere. Oh, look, the next day the skyscraper's gone. Oh, okay, I'm going to go have a coffee now. But there are things, believe it or not, that do stun me. That just knock me down and sit on me, drop me to the floor on my knees. And these are things that perhaps you would not even notice, because you're human and I don't even think I'm alive. It's like when someone hurts my feelings, because just to them it's fun. That stuns me, that knocks me down and sits on me. When someone betrays my trust, someone I thought was a friend, a lover, a pal, but she hurts me just because she can, because to her it's fun. That's the sort of thing that stuns me to the core of my being. And again, on the other hand, I can see whole skyscrapers appear and disappear one day after the other. I won't bat an eye. I can see the same repeated people coming and going off of buses and on city streets. To me, that's a regular day. Doesn't even register most of the time. But someone that I like, someone that I love, hurting my feelings just because they can, that damages me forever. Luckily, along the way, I lost the ability to remember most things. Sadly, as in what you and I talk about, I can recall them, at least the major parts of the story. But thankfully, I don't remember the individual step-by-step process of how I got there. Thankfully, the steps I took through that particular story, I can't recall. It's all been buried. The truth of the matter is, you and I are a collection of our experiences here. And we never actually forget anything, because that collection of experiences and memories that go with them make up you and me. I guess the best way of describing it is, say you have a table and you lay out a layer of cloth. And if it's good cloth and it's clean and it's fresh, it's seamless and it's smooth and it lays flat, that's a good experience. Now, a bad experience leaves a bad memory. And so when you lay another piece of cloth on top of the first one, the piece of cloth with the bad experience, the bad memories, it's twisted and pulled and bulges and it's dirty. It's got soot and grime and filth on it. So it doesn't lay flat. There's mountains and hills and it smells bad. But you move on. You have another experience, which is another layer of cloth you put on top of the table. And the layers keep building up. Sometimes the layers of cloth on that table smooth out, because you've had a series of experiences that were good, that were nice. The problem is, you lift up enough of those layers, the bad memories, the bad experiences are still there. But you just keep laying cloth, one on top of the other on top of that table. Sadly, I have never known a flat cloth, but I'm hoping. Again, this is why from this point forward, what we're talking about tonight is a fairy tale. Now, I think I have gone in one of my endless journeys, one of my walks outside of our world, outside of my body, outside of our universe. I think one night that I actually discovered what our universe is. And I'm not telling you what it is, I'm asking what you think. I think the universe is what it is, an electrical generator. I think the universe is what it is, a computer, a way of storing energy inside of those waves of electrical power. Now, the ancient peoples of our world knew that the universe contained all the knowledge that ever was and would ever be. And they knew that with the right set of commands, what you and I would think of as magic spells, what a computer programmer would think of as a user ID, a password, and putting in a call, they say in computer parlance, calling up information. You and I would call it magic spells. It's easier to understand. The ancient peoples of our world knew that if you knew the right magic spells, you could access the information that was stored all around us. The Asians call it the Akashic records. In fact, there was an event that I read about where about 100 years ago, a couple of Jesuit priests discovered how to record sounds from the distant past and to replay those moments of our history. The method they used, I never knew, but I tend to believe the story. Now, I have to also add this to the fact that the places I've seen with my own eyes during the day when I'm supposedly awake, walking down a street to go to the store and discovering that the street no longer attaches to the main boulevard, but all of a sudden there's a park. And it's obvious that the park's been there for decades. There's benches, there's concrete, there's shrubs. It needs a good cleaning. It's been there for a long time, but the day before, that park wasn't there. The street connected to the main boulevard. I've seen this with my own eyes. In a place called Silver Lake, California, a suburb of Los Angeles, on my way to my weekly voice lesson, I would drive by a collection of stores, and there was a tire store there 1 week, and I went back the next day for something, and the next day the tire store was gone. There was a Circuit City on Sunset Boulevard, just appeared. Now that wasn't unusual to the people who lived there because as far as they were concerned, that Circuit City had always been there. The only difference in the equation was me. So these are the things that I see when I'm quote-unquote awake during the day. Now I don't smoke, I don't drink, but I will admit to having lots of brain damage, as almost every bone in my body was broken by my original family before the age of 5. And of course it was always the old women who ran these families, either before or after they threw me out into the street. It was the old women who ran the clans, the tribes, the gangs, and did all the beatings. And it was the matriarch of one of these tribes, these gangs, who realized that I was left-handed. And from her culture, the left hand was, of course, the sign of the devil. And, of course, I try not to laugh out loud when I say that. On the other hand, these people were so stupid. I doubt they were actually devil worshippers. I doubt that the Satanists wanted anything to do with them beyond being slaves, because I would imagine even Satanists have standards. So this old woman, the matriarch of the gang, the tribe, broke my left arm just above the elbow. And of course that, at a very young age, caused my entire brain to rewire itself. And it did a lot of damage, because even today I'm still dyslexic. Imagine coming up with a word for someone who sees everything upside down and backwards and calling it dyslexic, dyslexia. I can never spell this to save my life. I can actually read upside down and backwards. I can actually look in a mirror, hold that mirror up to a glass window with the lettering on the outside. I can read it. I can read upside down and backwards. So yes, lots of brain damage. So I'm telling you this because you need to know the context of what I'm saying to you. So I've been very badly damaged. It was all, part of the CIA mind control experiments and to create super soldiers, sex slaves. Whoever I was supposed to have been was murdered by the CIA, tortured to death. Whoever I wanted to be, whoever I was supposed to be, that guy's dead. And maybe I'm dead. Maybe I'm too stubborn, just too plain stupid to realize it. Maybe I'm just too stupid, which would, I can't argue with the too stupid part. I'm just too stupid, too stubborn just to lay down and rot. But you need to know the context of where I'm coming from so you can understand, because I need your opinion. But the truth of the matter is I've seen too many things too many times to ignore them. And I'm really slow. So for these things to be obvious to me, it has to be like a thunderstorm outside with lightning hitting the parking lot, which I've lived through, by the way. That's quite eye-opening. Personally, I wish these things would stop happening. So anyway, I'm sleeping when I can. And I stopped dreaming a very long time ago. Now I just travel. The fellow who taught me Qigong, it's an ancient Asian technique for moving energy in the body. He taught me how to direct my conscious thoughts, so I could just basically lift out of my body and wander around the universe. No big deal. I would pass star systems like you would pass stores on your way to the mall in your car, just zipping right by. So this has happened to me too many times. Now, normally when this happens to me when I'm asleep and traveling, I go to dimensions that are close to the ones you and I live in. You know, there's not anything too terribly different about them except for the city where I occasionally go that giants obviously built and they shared their city with us. But we've talked about that. This was different, even for me. I left my body, duh. Left the Earth, okay. Left the solar system, okay. Traveling through solar systems, quick, okay. Left the galaxy, okay. All of a sudden, I leave the soap bubble and I'm outside of the bottle. And I think what I saw was actually for lack of a better term, a glass bottle with some wires running into it. And the soap bubble that holds our universe is inside that bottle, as well as all of the other soap bubbles that are clinging to the outside of the soap bubble that you and I live in. And I think I saw what could be called the real world. Again, I'm damaged, what do I know? But it was a world just like this one, but different. There were people there, just like you and me, and it was very pretty. It was very clean. It looked like a city. It could have just been a college campus on a series of very beautiful green, gently rolling hills. It actually did look like a university campus to me. It was very clean, very pretty. Not overcrowded, but there were people, just people. Nothing unusual about any of this until I looked up at the sky. Sky was hard to miss. There were no stars. Well, there was no sky. There were just patterns of energy, like row after row of ribbon candy, white and red. No clouds, no sun, no moon. But it was very bright and shiny outside. But the sky was just line after line of colorful ribbons, mostly white, but mixed with red. It didn't occur to me at the time that I had perhaps left the galaxy, left the universe, and had popped out of the bottle where this laboratory experiment was going on. The only thing that I could compare what I saw at that particular moment was chaos. Now there's a man that I really like his work by the name of Roger Zelazny. I think he has since died. But he wrote a series of books called Amber. The Chronicles of Amber, The Princes of Amber, or 9 Princes in Amber. It's a whole series of books. And basically it concentrated on the fact that in his universe that he had created, there were two forces competing against one another. One represented order, and that was the city called Amber, or the dimension called Amber. At the other extreme, in the same universe, they called it chaos, the courts of chaos. And in between these two extremes were an infinite number of realities, what you and I would call different dimensions, that scientists tell us actually do exist. But if you knew how, you could actually walk from one dimension to the other. We've chatted about this briefly, tunnels in the sky. If you could see them, if the vibration of your body changed enough or raised high enough, you could actually see the world differently. You could actually see things that you and I cannot see. You could see doorways, and you could walk through those doorways. And you might evolve, because the frequency of your body would continue to go up. But Roger Zelazny wrote about this. And we also talked about occasionally how the farther you get away from your home dimension, which is where you and I are right now, the farther we got away, walking from dimension to dimension, the more different things would become, which gets me back to the city made by giants that I've seen quite often and where human beings live. The giants have since left, but they left us these really cool cities. And you and I are like Barbie dolls standing next to a giant, but the cities were really pretty. Very, very utilitarian, very, very basic engineering, brute force gets the job done sort of a thing. But in their own way, they were very beautiful. And we were whoever we are living there is very peaceful and happy. But at this particular point, I think I left our soap bubble universe, left the bottle behind where these soap bubbles are stored. And I think I saw the courts of chaos, just like Roger Zelazny described in his books. So, was I influenced by his books, and was I just dreaming? I don't know. But, it always seems that the facts fall into place. The pieces of the puzzle fit together in ways I never thought about. So are we inside of a machine? Is it a deliberate process where you and I are 19 years old, our parents pay for us to get a 4-year education, or in our case, a 100-year education, in one afternoon? We go to school, we lay down on a couch, we're plugged into a machine, a virtual reality machine, where you and I are born, live, and die an entire lifetime in a few hours. And then if we pass the course, we get our degree, say in North American Studies with a minor in Western English. Is this a machine deliberately built for the purpose? Is this a machine that's a three-dimensional holographic representation of the real universe, and it's just playing the same show over and over and over again, and its only purpose is to keep us alive until we get to a new home somewhere? What if we're inside of a machine that creates electricity that is used by the people living outside in the real world? That's perfectly reasonable. Is our entire soap bubble universe sitting inside of a glass jar on a table in a university campus lab somewhere, and you and I are just part of a lab experiment? Maybe you and I are a mistake, an accident. Maybe they're experimenting with generating electrical energy, and you and I are just microbes that nobody noticed. What if we are a mistake? What if God is not a computer program? What if God is just a computer glitch? You and I are a mistake. Our masters are nothing more than a computer virus, or worse yet, a hacker's idea of a practical joke. Or, worse than that, our masters are just an accident, just like you and me. A side effect that has nothing to do with the real goal of the experiment. You and I are a mistake. Or did someone create a laboratory experiment to create life? There was one experiment, I don't remember the details, it's one of those things, I didn't really pay much attention to, where a Western scientist, a real one, did an experiment with electricity inside of a vacuum chamber, and I really do forget the details. But what I do remember is that the scientist, without doing anything, noticed that the particles inside of the electrically charged vacuum chamber instantaneously took on the shape of a spiral galaxy. Identical in design to the spiral galaxy that you and I live in right now. So I guess the question is, what if this unknown to the scientist, did he also create life? Simply by pumping the air out of a vacuum chamber, adding electricity, put some water and carbon in there, and it automatically, all by itself, became a spiral galaxy. Did he also create life? Now you and I know that you and I can create life right now. It's not hard. All you need is water, some burnt grass clippings from your front yard, and a battery with a couple of wires. Mix the burnt grass clippings, carbon, into the water, pass a small electrical charge through it for a bit, Put it into a dark closet overnight, and the next day you'll notice that life has formed all by itself. We didn't do anything. Not really. So what if God, Alamac, is a college student, a senior, and she pumped the air out of a sealed chamber, filled it with electricity, water, and carbon, and life began? You and me. That would certainly explain the sealed glass jar I saw with electrical wiring running into it. Now, what if she invited Alamac, the senior at college, what if she invited her girlfriend to help her with the same experiment? Her girlfriend's named Yahweh, and she's a freshman. She doesn't know much, but she needs to learn. So they become lovers. And then they have a lover's quarrel and they split up. Let's say they continue their quarrel over the direction the experiment should now go. They've created life. Now they now hate each other. They still love each other, but they now hate each other. And they still have to work together because there's a lab experiment that they're working on. They have to finish to get a grade. What if you and I are a lab experiment? What if our two mothers realized they had created life, you and me, and they're now fighting over us, fighting to decide who is going to control us, fighting over life and death decisions over us, which way we should evolve? I don't know. But when I sit back and I look at where the trail goes, where the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, and with everything else you and I have talked about, this is maybe another possibility we need to examine, we need to at least think about. Not where I expected to go. Not at all. But I will leave you with a thought and a prayer, and hope it helps. May you live as long as you wish. May you love as long as you live. For the 2012fad.com, this is Charlie Bluehawk. The 2012 Fad is brought to you by Coffee and Blood, Love Letters Between the Dead, a series of 5 erotica horror novels about a fallen angel fighting his way back to regain his own soul, and how the CIA war against the human race, their black magic, captures and traps him in the body of a mind-controlled slave designed to hunt down and to kill their god, their Satan.